Three teenagers among 5 persons arrested on gun armor charges in St. Catherine. 5 persons, including 3 teenagers, are in custody facing criminal charges following the seizure of 3 illegal guns during a police operation in Old Harbour, St. Catherine Sunday morning. More than 30 rounds of ammunition were also seized. Senior Superintendent Christopher Phillips, commanding officer for the St. Catherine South Police, told reporters that the suspects were nabbed after the police responded to reports of gunfire in the vicinity of Old Harbour. They were captured during a police spot check in nearby New Harbour Village. There were 6 persons in the vehicle that was intercepted by the police team, but one of them, a man, escaped, Superintendent Phillips explained. He said the car was searched and the guns and ammunition were found, arising from which he said 5 persons were arrested. Among the 5 detained, 2 are 15 years old and 1 is 17. The other 2 are a 33-year-old businesswoman from New Harbour Village and a 27-year-old fisherman from Old Harbour Bay. Superintendent Phillips said a total of 5 illegal guns were seized in the division over the weekend. National security face-off. Chang dismisses Bunting's criticism. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang has responded strongly to comments from his opposition counterpart, Senator Peter Bunting, criticizing his handling of the portfolio. Mr. Bunting, speaking at a People's National Party meeting on January 14, accused the government of failing to implement measures to curb crime. He also pointed to an inefficient allocation of resources to the police. But in his response to comments, Dr. Chang accused Mr. Bunting of seeking to politicize the issue of crime. He also took issue with Mr. Bunting's persistent stand of not supporting the imposition of states of emergency. He also claimed there was a significant decline in budgetary allocation to the police over the period 2011 to 2014 under the PNP, added that since then, the Andrew Holness-led administration has made significant investment in resources to the police, citing upcoming construction projects for police stations. Dr. Chang was speaking Friday at a handing over ceremony for the 30 L200 pickup of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. The vehicles are valued at approximately $230 million. PNP Womens Movement condemns killing of Melissa Silvera. The People's National Party Women's Movement has declared condemnation in the strongest terms of the tragic murder of Melissa Silvera, while also acknowledging the charge laid against her husband, Jolene Silvera, on Friday. Mr. Silvera, a former member of Parliament, is to appear in court next week. Patricia Duncan Sutherland, president of the PNP Women's Movement, says the nation has been rocked with shock and concern as circumstances surrounding Mrs. Silvera's death have been brought to light over the last month. She says the details have had a devastating impact on the People's National Party, as well as the families of the victim and accused. Mrs. Duncan Sutherland says incidents such as this bring to the fore the threats to safety and security of women and children in the society, and that it is important to bring perpetrators of violence to justice. It was initially reported that Mrs. Silvera died in her sleep on November 10, but a post-mortem later revealed the presence of bullet fragments in her body. Children's Advocate welcomes plan to bar corporal punishment, urges promotion of meaningful alternatives. Children's Advocate Diana Gardner Harrison has welcomed the plan to ban the beating of children by their parents and relatives. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced last week that the government intends to introduce legislation to ban all forms of corporal punishment. He was reacting to a video in which a mother is seen stomping on the head and neck of her daughter. Mr. Holness said abuse of children by their parents is being disguised as corporal punishment and that legislation to criminalize these actions are coming. The Children's Advocate, speaking on Sunday, voiced support for this approach. Because we agree from the Office of the Children's Advocate that corporal punishment is an abuse and it's violence. She noted that extreme actions of corporal punishment, as reflected in the video in question, when you have a parent breaking a child's arm in the name of discipline, when we have a child who is a victim of extreme stomping on the neck, must be deplored and outlawed. She nevertheless sounded a note of caution, urging that any of the enactment and any such legal prohibition must be preceded by the public education program that will really guide parents in a way practical. Mrs. Gardner Harris says that the authorities must introduce alternatives to corporal punishment so as not to criminalize parents seeking to discipline their children. These measures, she said, must be workable and meaningful alternatives to corporal punishment. Possibly new Lucy Town as government considers development plans. The government plans for the development of Lucy could include relocating the township to make it more climate resistant and keeping the existing location as a historic site. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who was speaking to vendors during a tour of the Cleveland market on Friday, said the government may have to at some point build a new town as those who could no longer accommodate the businesses as well as the people who traverse the town daily. He noted that while vendors have expressed concern about the flooding of the market whenever it rains, the problem affects the entire town. It's not just the market, the entire town of Lucy is at or just below sea level. When it comes to high tide or heavy rains, the town is flooded. So any infrastructure we put here, we must make it climate resilient, he reported. So we might have to find lands adjacent to the town and put in a new road, put up some new buildings and invite people who are in the existing town to relocate there while we take the land here and redevelop them because this town has historic values, Holness stated. He noted that markets are a critical part of the plan by the government to address urban townships in rural areas and parish capitals. Markets are critical to rural and urban life, but they are also critical to townships. We know that right across Jamaica, we have challenges with our markets, he said. We are going to upgrade this market. We will ensure that it is not impacted by the climate. The market doesn't always have to be there. I know people are wedding to some location and say it has been here for generations. If it has historic value, yes, we will try to preserve it, he pledged. The Prime Minister's stop at the Cleveland market formed part of a road visit to Hanover. He was accompanied by Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Desmond McKenzie. They also visited the Hopewell Market in Parish, Open and Therapeutic Park at Hanover Infirmary, and broke ground for the matron's quarters at the facility. The Prime Minister also stopped at Rose's High School for a rap session with the students. Judge notes severe lack of places for attorney-client consultation. Supreme Court Judge Justice Clayton Pusey has pointed to what he says is a severe lack of space in correctional facilities and police lockups where attorneys can dialogue with their clients confidentially. Justice Pusey made the observation recently during the trial of 23-year-old quantity analyst Rochelle Foster, who was last Thursday found guilty of the 2019 stabbing death of national senior women's footballer Tarana Plum Plum Clark. Foster's legal team had complained that they were unable to get permission from the authorities at the South Camp Adult Correctional Facility where she was being held to meet with their client to take instructions. This entire country has a severe lack of places where that can be dealt with. There are some new courthouses like the Spanish Town Courthouse, which is about 20-odd-year-old, and when they build that courthouse, there is a particular area where lawyers would be asked to speak to their clients and it was flooded, and I don't think it has been used for some time, Justice Pusey said in responding to complaints from attorneys. He noted, however, that even with this severe lack, the correctional services will still cut above the lockup of many of the lockups have no space for attorneys or anyone to speak to detainees in privacy. In fact, there is one lockup in Kingston where members of the public or relatives can't see their detainees at all. So there are things that I am sure the private bar is willing to advocate for, and there are other legal means through which you can get that done. Those are the situations, Justice Pusey stated. He, however, noted that the South Camp facility was not one of those with many complaints in that respect. The point is, though the correctional services, they do have a difficulty in terms of availability at times because they do indicate that sometimes people come at inconvenient times and there are issues in terms of other things. But the fact is that there is a duty for them to make the place available for consultations, Justice Pusey stated. The corrections rule state that reasonable facilities should be provided to the legal advisor of an inmate, which will allow the inmate to remain in the site but not in the earshot of a member of staff. In June last year, reporters reported that the leadership of the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center in downtown Kingston and some members of the legal fraternity were at loggerhead over a restriction on Saturday visit to clients by the attorneys, who contended that other people have been allowed to visit while they were being barred. The issue was under probe by the Criminal Law Practice and Procedure Subcommittee of the Jamaica Bar Association. Days later, the prison authorities made a concession, with the superintendent of the prison agreeing to make available his cell phone number and email address to attorneys so they could contact him and make arrangements in advance to visit their clients. As a rule, attorneys want to visit clients are required to complete and submit a visitor's application form for each client. According to the Department of Correctional Services (DCS), in that correspondence, attorneys are permitted to visit correctional facilities Mondays to Fridays between 10 a.m. and 12 noon and 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. on Saturdays. DCS, DCS Response, with queries at the time, emphasized that the department has long kept its commitment to maintaining mutual interaction with our legal counterparts. There is no provision in the governing legislation that extends allow visits by legal advisors on a Saturday. In fact, Rule 196.3 of the Correctional Institution, Adult Correctional Centers Rules, 1991, explicitly provides for visits on weekdays. However, the DCS, having heard the limitations faced by the legal advisors during the weekdays, has extended its discretion to permit visits on Saturdays between the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 noon. There are, however, instances where the inaction of legal advisor or existing circumstances within the correctional centers renders it impractical or unsafe to permit entry into the institution, it then stated. Furthermore, the DCS said it is of its posture to ensure its actions do not fetter the system of justice, as it is constitutional right for an inmate to receive proper representation. Attorneys have continued to lobby for proper facilities at St. Catherine District Prison and Horizon Remand Center, where they can accommodate meeting between clients and counsel to communicate in confidence and privacy without interference or limitations. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell for daily updates.